Austin. Hey, congratulations on your new film, Island Between the Tides.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
More of a congratulations. I want to say that it's being in Cinequest as the opening night film. So that is terrific. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I can speak for my co-director and co-writer Andy and I when I just say that we're like over the moon. It has been such a long process, as I think every independent film is, to get to this point. And here we are, just 24 hours away from being able to let the world in a little bit on our creation, one screening at a time, right?
You know what? It is very exciting, and I'm actually planning to be at Cinequest on Thursday night myself. So it's going to be a great celebration.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to meet in person.
Yeah, most excellent. So we have to hear it first. Is how did this story actually came about? I understand it was based on a play.
Yeah, so this is quite the long twisting saga, and I'll give you the short version. So it's actually based on a story by J.M. Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan most famously. And 20 years later, he returned to some of the same thematic material and wrote sort of like a pseudo sequel to it called Mary Rose that's been largely forgotten. It's never been adapted into a feature film before. Not for lack of trying. Alfred Hitchcock famously tried to, spend huge chunks of his career trying to get this made. And in fact, there was the one stipulation that the studio put on him that he could have any film greenlit so long as it wasn't Mary Rose, because it was felt at the time that ghost stories weren't marketable. And we see how much times have changed now since then. And so it's something that's been on my radar since I was a teenager. I read the play when I was 14 or 15 and have been sort of low-key obsessed with it for, now most of my life. And the opportunity when another project that Andy and I were doing together fell through, to shift our time, resources, and attention just at the beginning of COVID to getting this up and running and to developing it. And it's quite a loose adaptation, but we use that as our sort of pool of material to pull from.
So what was the original story for Mary Rose that was so difficult to adapt on the screen?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing with Hitchcock, a lot of that was just that viewer tastes, I think, were quite different then. And what was looked at as a more sort of melancholic, nostalgic rendering of these ideas from Peter Pan weren't looked to be sort of profitable at kind of a narrow definition of what that marketplace is and what people expect out of a Hitchcock film. Mary Rose wouldn't have checked that box. And after his dream, sort of, his last real effort to get it made was in the 1960s. The play has just fallen into sort of, a sort of void where people seem to have forgotten about it. Very rarely it'll get still staged as a theater production. I think most recently in Chicago a couple of years ago, but it's never, to our knowledge, ever been targeted for an indie film, certainly, at least not since it passed into the public domain. So we were very fortunate in being able to be the first to adapt this incredible story.
Well, apparently you discovered it and brought it back. So tell us about how this story, Island Between the Tides, how you adapted it. Because at first I almost thought it was like some kind of weird time travel thing, but then I realized it was a ghost story after all.
Yeah, ghost story first and foremost, but in a way, when we say it's a ghost story, it's a young woman who's had basically time thieved from her. So she steps foot on this island that, in essence, removes her from time, allows her to see through it and to see and meet other people who have also stepped foot on this island, no matter when it was that they were actually alive. But it takes a quarter century from her own life. So when she steps back off, it's as though no time has passed to her, but the world has aged 25 years around her, and all of her relationships have now basically, completely, she was presumed missing and dead, and now she has to find a way to meet back with a world that's moved on without her. And that's that kernel of the idea that's just been so tantalizing to us. And that's basically the device from the play that we've taken, and it's a small part of the play, but we've taken and we've fashioned this whole adaptation around that central idea.
Now, of course, you still left that Easter egg of Mary Rose into your film.
Yeah, that's right. So the main character from J.M. Barrie's original is a secondary character in ours, And we actually look at this in a way as being, any of these different people who have stepped foot on this island, from our main character, Lily, to Mary Rose, who, of course, was the main character in Barry's original and was going to be the main character in Hitchcock's version, to the two or three other characters. We could tell the story from the perspective of each of them, and it would be the same group of characters who would be, at the center. So it's an interesting way that we found to adapt it. It's sort of in part sequel, in part adaptation, in part original story, in part sidequel in a way. That's the term Andy and I are fond of. But it's a rendering that I think will be surprising to people who think they know the story.
Now, production story wise, because you basically jump through the time loops, into several decades. Was it easy to make a decision to basically put a setting in a town where it seems like time barely moves for itself? So this way you don't have to change, how can you say, create a production set, over 3 or 4 decades or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good comment, and absolutely, and that's something that's fascinating about this town that we shot in. We were the first feature film ever to shoot in this place called Prince Rupert in northern British Columbia. It's right near the Alaskan border, and it's a city that was larger a century ago than it is now. So yes, there's been new development. Yes, there are new buildings, but the shell of it is still. Especially like the center of town, it feels like it's slowly receding back into the rainforest as the rest of the province, Rupertites will have to forgive me, but the rest of the province sort of moves on without it. And it's such a fascinating location to capture on camera, because not only are all these locations fresh and we can sort of see them from the first time, but it has this sort of lived in history that's exactly what we've been trying to find with the characters too. So in a way, one can kind of influence and inform the other. And I think if there's like a sort of like engine to the visuals of the film, I hope it's that sort of weird tapestry of time that we get.
And what about this island? What was it, near that town, or you had to go far and wide to search for
Oh
this island?
man, it's such a good question. So that was the thing, that we were so excited about shooting this film in Prince Rupert, but we would only be able to if we would be able to find our titular island, the island between tides. And so Andy and I set all these parameters where we knew it had to be, within an hour by boat, because to have a shooting day, especially with kids who can only work 8 hours, all these stipulations, it had to actually be a real tidal island, because we needed to see the look when Lily can cross over the tidal steps to it, and also what it's looked like when it's surrounded by water. So Andy and I spent an afternoon on Google Maps, on Google Earth, and had a short list of about 5 or 6 different possible tidal islands that we could only see to a degree over Google Earth. It would never be the same as seeing in real life. And for our first scout, we arrived in Prince Rupert and immediately we had a little bit of development backing from Telefilm Canada, and we were able to rent an hour in a helicopter. And the helicopter took us around all 5 of these tidal islands. And, as soon as the clouds parted and we saw the one that would become our island, we were like, oh yeah, no, we're shooting this movie in Prince Rupert. This is exactly what we've been looking for. And like it brought a lot of challenges too. That's fodder for much longer conversation. But I think we've come out of the experience prepared to, do it again. So that's something.
What was one of the challenges is the timing of the tides, that you actually like you have to have like exerted a lot of patience. I mean, I feel like that's probably like a huge part of your production schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Oh, in every way, like emphatically and profoundly. We had these like 15-minute windows twice a day. So once when the tide's coming in and once when it's coming out, where we would get the perfect steps that were, what was in all our concept art, and is what we've always dreamed about, is what we pitched the movie around, is these steps that our main character can sort of hop over to get on and off the island. And one of those windows we blew through because long reasons, but we couldn't finish the scene that we were deeply in the middle of, and our tidal window was just evacuating on us, and it was so much faster. No amount of meetings and scouts before we went out to that island 4 or 5 times to see it all the different windows, none of that could prepare us for the reality of just how hard it would be to capture those windows. We ended up getting one of them, and I think we had, let's say, about 10 minutes to get these shots that appear through the whole film of characters and different characters stepping onto the island, stepping off it. You got it. That was one of the hardest parts.
now, working because you being a director with both with Andrew itself. Tell us
Yeah.
about the cinematography style that you wanted to adapt, because I always find that when ghost stories are adapted to film, you want to set up a certain type of mood with the cinematography.
Yeah, very much so. And Andy and I, we storyboard everything. A big part of that is just knowing that on the day things will change, and to be able to have done that level of preparation beforehand allows us to identify, okay, well, this thing will be more important than that one because we know that the scene can work without that. Especially when things are going wrong and we're having to cut 10 setups from a day, for instance. But the third part of that collaboration is our DP, Danny Lavoie, who's just absolutely, a genius in terms of being able to get evocative imagery with soft light, with, just this mood that I think so much of the atmosphere is through that photography. And, yes, we had touchstones. Yes, we would get together and talk about, oh, well, this sort of idea or that film, has some interesting things that we can sort of glean from and learn from. But a biggest part of that was just being in the space and being able to see these locations and be in this town sort of steeped in that atmosphere to find ways that we could then reflect it, and reproduce it on camera.
And tell us about the casting of Paloma as in your lead role. I spoke to her before,
Oh,
not
cool.
this film, but for a different film. But I find her very very talented on the range of characters she can actually play.
Yeah, talented and enigmatic, I think too, which was a big part of the draw for us with Lily. That was a role that we cast her about 2 weeks from the start of the shoot. It was something, we had a three country I think we got in the realm of about 2,000 auditions for that role. And we were really fortunate to find Paloma just in Vancouver. For some reason, our first two sort of call outs, we didn't even see her until right near the very end. And as soon as she stepped in and managed to inhabit that sort of otherness quality to Lily, someone who's been changed from her experience on the island, maybe, in a state of almost arrested development. One of the characters says of her that it's as though she's been sort of trapped in this frost where the rest of the world has grown up, but she hasn't. And it's such a delicate, precise quality to try to crystallize, and it was so elusive for us. And Paloma, we found, was able to bring that. And from the moment we saw, I think it was her second interview, or second audition, the line right after that was, well, if we book you a ferry tomorrow, because it's 22 hours from Vancouver Island by ferry to get to Prince Rupert, if we book you a ferry tomorrow, can you be on it? And I think she needed a day to sort some things out in Vancouver, but she was on the next one.
Most excellent. Well, Austin, let me wrap it up with one last question because and no spoilers, of course, because I'm not going to reveal. But did you struggle, or how satisfying that ending of yours for this film?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we were able to, if someone reads the J.M. Barrie original Mary Rose, they'll find that it's in the last 20 or so pages of this, 120-page play where we've found and we've adapted what the essence of that was. Like, that's where The Island Between Tides is in the last 20 pages of Mary Rose. And it's in that last page or two where it takes it into absolute slam dunk territory for us as being something that's it's a story that we just have to tell, that we have to find a way to get out there, and that still feels relevant more than a century on. And I think that ending is just such a huge part of it too, the way that, again, without giving anything away, it manages to bring another dimension to this idea of, if not a time loop, at least time folding in on itself, and different periods influencing other periods in surprising ways that allow us to look at time as something other than a purely linear construct. And I feel like if the film, sort of thematically manages to succeed with one thing, I hope it's just being able to present this idea in a way that we don't see as often.
Well said, Austin. It's a pleasure carrying this conversation with you about Island Between the Tides, and I'll look forward to hopefully meeting you in person on opening night at
Looking
Cinequest.
forward to that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Gig.
Thank you.